The morning sun slipped lazily through the tall windows of the family estate, painting golden streaks across the polished marble floors. I had always loved birthdays, the soft hum of anticipation, the way small joys seemed to magnify for one day of the year. Today was supposed to be different. Today was my birthday, and after so many years of shared laughter and memories in this house, I had expected warmth, a smile, perhaps even a hug from my family. Instead, silence greeted me. The phone didn't ring with the usual flurry of happy birthday messages. No notifications popped up on my screen. Even my friends seemed to forget, lost in their own lives. My heart sank slightly, but I told myself it was okay. Perhaps they would come later. After all, it was early. By mid-morning, I decided to visit the house, the grand estate where my childhood was etched into every corridor, every doorframe, every painting. As I approached the front gate, a strange heaviness settled in my chest. The driveway was empty, the front doors eerily closed. My mother's car was gone, my father's study silent. I hesitated, hand hovering over the doorknob. Inside, the house was immaculate. Too immaculate. The living room smelled faintly of fresh flowers, arranged in perfect symmetry. But there were no candles, no decorations, nothing that spoke of celebration. My heart thudded, an anxious rhythm. I called out their names once, twice, 3 times, silence, then I noticed it. On the grand dining table, laid out in precise formality, sat a single envelope. I recognized my name scrawled across it in my mother's delicate handwriting. My fingers trembled as I opened it, expecting a last-minute apology, a note of affection. "You are no longer part of this family," it read. The words hit me like a physical blow. My vision blurred, chest tightening with disbelief. No explanation. No reason, just a sentence, cold and absolute, erasing years of shared history, as if I had never existed. Memories flashed in my mind. Birthdays when my parents stayed up late to bake my favorite cake. Christmas mornings with presents stacked higher than I could reach. Laughter spilling down these same corridors, and now, nothing. I stumbled to the staircase, clutching the railing, as if it could anchor me to reality. I remembered my father's face during my last visit, strained tight, lipped avoidance in his eyes. I remembered my siblings' smiles, the faint mockery I had brushed off as sibling teasing. Every small hurt, every slight I had never confronted, now made sense. This was the culmination. My family, the people who had promised unconditional love, had cut me out like a mistake. Anger rose, sharp and burning. How dare they? How dare they erase me? My mind raced. I wanted to scream, to throw the envelope across the room, to demand answers that I feared would never come. And yet beneath the fury, beneath the betrayal, there was a deeper, quieter pain, loneliness. The realization that the people who should have been my refuge had chosen to exile me on a day meant to celebrate my life. I wandered through the house aimlessly, touching objects that once held meaning. My father's antique desk, my mother's porcelain figurines, my sister's childhood drawings framed on the wall. Each item whispered a memory, each memory a dagger. The house was still beautiful, still majestic, yet it felt foreign, like I was a ghost wandering in someone else's life. By the time evening descended, painting the rooms in a somber twilight, I made my way to the terrace overlooking the gardens. The scent of roses mingled with the cool night air. I pressed my forehead against the railing, staring at the horizon, my chest heavy with grief and fury. The betrayal was complete. My birthday, once a celebration of life, had become a stark reminder of abandonment. And in the quiet ache of that night, a small, fierce ember of resolve began to glow inside me. If my family could cut me off so easily, then I would rise elsewhere. If they thought their fortune, their legacy, their empire could define me, they had underestimated the very person they discarded. And someday, they would see. The first weeks after that birthday were unbearable. Each morning I woke with a hollow ache, the betrayal still raw in my chest. I avoided the family estate, refused their calls, and even the thought of my childhood home twisted my stomach. Yet amid the grief, something else began to take root, a quiet, burning determination. If they wanted to erase me, I would erase the part of my life that depended on them. I would build myself from the ground up, stronger, smarter, untouchable. I started small. I rented a modest apartment downtown, a space barely larger than a closet, furnished with hand-me-downs and thrifted essentials. It smelled faintly of paint and ambition. I traded old habits for new ones, replacing idle mornings with long hours of study and reflection. I dug through business books, devoured biographies of the powerful and the clever, and learned to harness my anger into focus. Anger was no longer destructive. It became fuel. At first, progress was painfully slow. Friends drifted away, unable to understand the intensity of my obsession. The city felt vast and indifferent, the neon lights mocking my smallness, yet I thrived in the solitude, learning to savor the independence I had never known. Every late night at my desk, every rejection I faced in job applications, every tiny failure was a brick in the foundation I was laying. I reminded myself that I was building not just a life, but a future capable of eclipsing theirs. A turning point came when I met Marcus, a quiet, sharp-minded consultant who recognized my potential. He didn't pity me, nor did he offer empty sympathy. Instead, he challenged me, pushed me to think strategically, to see opportunities where others saw walls. With him, I learned the subtle art of influence, of alliances, of timing. Slowly, doors began to open. Projects I handled meticulously led to small victories, which led to larger ones, and before long, the faint ember of revenge began to glow into a steady flame. Yet the transformation wasn't only professional. I rebuilt my identity, shedding the fragile, overlooked child I had once been. I learned to dress for confidence, to speak with authority, to carry myself in a way that demanded respect. Every mirror became a reminder I was no longer the person they had discarded. I was someone to be reckoned with. Despite this growing power, the memories of that birthday haunted me. I remembered the cold eyes of my parents, the curt glances of my siblings, the dismissive words that had shattered me. At night, when the city lights blurred into long streams of gold and silver through my window, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my pain. But then, with deliberate thought, I would refocus. That pain would not destroy me. It would instruct me. Every slight, every dismissal, became a lesson in strategy and patience. I began to invest quietly, discreetly, into ventures my family would never notice. Startups, real estate, small companies with hidden potential. I studied market patterns, legal loopholes, and financial strategies. Slowly, methodically, wealth began to accumulate. Not the flashy wealth they flaunted, not the shallow trophies of opulence. They wouldn't even see this coming. This was deliberate, controlled power, built on intelligence, patience, and an unyielding desire to prove that I could thrive without them. Months turned into years, and I changed along with the rhythm of my own ambition. The quiet apartment became a sleek office. The late-night study sessions became strategic meetings. The lone dinners became networking events, where allies became friends and friends became partners. I had entered a new world, one that my family had never imagined I could inhabit, and somewhere in the depths of my heart, beneath pride and achievement, the ember of revenge continued to glow. I did not rush it, I did not plot it recklessly. Instead, I let it grow silently, nourished by every memory of abandonment, every pang of loss. One day, my family would feel the sting of what they had cast aside, but that day was not today. Today, I built myself. Today, I rose. And tomorrow, the reckoning would come. Years had passed since that cruel birthday, and in that time, I had transformed from the abandoned child into a force my family would have never imagined. The quiet apartment, the endless nights of study and strategy, the small victories that snowballed into influence, all of it had led me here. I had wealth, power, and most importantly, the knowledge that the family who had discarded me was now vulnerable. I didn't rush. Patience had become my ally. I studied my family's empire from afar. The sprawling investments, the corporate board meetings, the complacent management that assumed the family name alone guaranteed stability. I learned every flaw, every weakness, every crack in their carefully constructed facade. And slowly, I began to position myself where it mattered most. It started with a seemingly minor acquisition, a company my family had overlooked, undervalued, dismissed. I swooped in quietly, offering a better deal to the stakeholders, building alliances behind closed doors. My name was not one they would recognize, not yet. But each small victory gave me leverage, and leverage was the language of power I had come to speak fluently. I took great care to remain unseen, strategic. The family still basked in their fortune, oblivious to the rising shadow at their heels. I attended corporate events under aliases, cultivated trust among key players, and made moves that appeared incidental but were anything but. Every step was calculated, every interaction a brick in the invisible ladder I was climbing to their empire. The thrill of it was intoxicating, not in malice but in poetic justice. They had believed they were the masters of fate, that I was powerless, a mistake to be ignored. Yet here I was, orchestrating a quiet revolution, using their own arrogance against them. I reveled in the irony. Every carefully drafted contract, every quiet merger, every subtle shift in stock holdings brought me closer to a truth they would never have anticipated. The child they had thrown aside was the one rewriting the rules, and yet I kept my humanity intact. I did not gloat, did not flaunt. My revenge was not about humiliation. It was about inevitability. I wanted the law, the contracts, the strategy to speak for itself. I wanted them to realize too late that they had underestimated me. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, during a seemingly routine board meeting for one of the family's largest holdings. I had secured proxy votes from key stakeholders months prior, quietly ensuring that their decisions would now be influenced by my hand. The moment the chairman called the vote on a major acquisition, one they had argued passionately over, I moved. One simple motion, one decisive vote, and the deal shifted entirely. Control was no longer in their hands. I watched from the shadows as panic flickered across their faces, subtle but undeniable. The whispers began, questions, doubts, a nervous tension I had never seen in the family's polished veneer. Their empire, which had once seemed untouchable, was now vulnerable not because of reckless enemies, not because of misfortune, but because of the one they had cast aside. It was a strange sensation, this quiet triumph. I didn't feel the thrill of immediate victory, nor the pleasure of revenge served hot. Instead, I felt a calm satisfaction, a serene acknowledgement that justice, slow and deliberate, was unfolding exactly as it should. They had underestimated me, and now the scales were balancing themselves. I retreated from the meeting quietly, letting the chaos I had sown grow in their absence. Outside, the city lights glimmered against the night sky, and I allowed myself a small, private smile. My birthday had once been a day of betrayal, a reminder of rejection and abandonment. Now, it had become the quiet engine of something far greater. One day, I would confront them not with anger, but with the undeniable proof of what I had built from the ashes of their betrayal. Until then, I would continue to weave my strategy, slowly, meticulously, ensuring that when the time came, there would be no escape. Their fortune, their pride, their empire, it would all be mine to control. And they would remember, with the sharp clarity of regret, the day they chose to cut me off. The day arrived quietly, almost unremarkably, but I knew its weight. It was my birthday again, the anniversary of the day my family had cast me aside, and the day I would finally witness the culmination of years of patience, strategy, and quiet resilience. Unlike the birthdays of my youth, there were no balloons, no cakes, no cheerful calls. This one was mine entirely, and it would mark a different kind of celebration. I had orchestrated everything to perfection. The family estate, once the symbol of my abandonment, now stood as the stage for their reckoning. I had acquired controlling shares of nearly every major holding in their fortune, quietly and deliberately, leveraging alliances and contracts that left no room for maneuver. It was all legal, all above board, and all irreversible. The irony was intoxicating. They had wielded power as if it were a birthright, while I had earned it inch by inch, unseen, unchallenged, unstoppable. They arrived that afternoon, confident as ever, unaware of the storm looming over them. Their smiles were polished, their voices smooth with the pretense of civility. I watched from the drawing room, detached yet attentive, as they moved through the house with the casual entitlement of those who had never known true consequence. When the meeting began, the shift in power became clear. Their empire, once untouchable, their identity entwined with it, was now at my mercy. Every decision they attempted to make was either blocked, redirected, or already under my control. Confusion flitted across their faces, subtle at first, then unmistakable. A whispered question here, a panicked glance there. My siblings' hands trembled as they reviewed financial documents, my parents' expressions tight with disbelief. The house, once a sanctuary of their dominance, had become a theater of their disempowerment, and I did not gloat. I did not need to. Justice was quiet, inevitable, and far more satisfying than any shout or insult could ever be. I allowed them to piece together the truth themselves, to feel the creeping realization that the child they had discarded had grown into the very force that now eclipsed them. "Everything you've built," I said softly, stepping into the room for the first time that afternoon, "is under my control now. Legally, ethically, irrevocably. You will find that fortune is meaningless without responsibility to wield it wisely." The room fell silent. My parents' faces were pale, my siblings' eyes wide with shock. They searched for anger, for revenge, for some sign of malice, but I offered none. My victory was not in tormenting them. It was in proving what they had never believed possible, that I was unstoppable, self-made, and independent. A strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow settled over me. I had won, yes, but at what cost? The people who should have loved me had made this necessary. And yet the pain of the past had forged me into someone capable of such measured, precise triumph. Their betrayal had been the crucible that shaped me. When the meeting ended, I left them in the chaos of their own realization and stepped out onto the terrace, the same terrace where I had stood on the first birthday they had abandoned me. The evening air was crisp, carrying the scent of roses from the garden below. I held a single candle in my hand, lighting it with careful attention, and let its flame flicker gently in the twilight. I smiled quietly to myself. No speeches were needed, no celebrations. I was free, I was powerful. And I was whole not because they acknowledged me, not because they returned what they had taken, but because I had built a life, a legacy, a self, that could never again be threatened by the cruelty. Tonight, I would celebrate alone, with the quiet dignity of someone who had survived, grown, and ultimately prevailed. And somewhere deep inside I allowed a small thought to linger, a whisper to the past, "You chose to cut me off." And I chose to rise. The candle's light reflected off the glass, golden and unwavering, and in its glow I felt the full weight of victory. Not revenge as cruelty, but as justice, not as humiliation, but as affirmation. My family had tried to define my worth, and I had rewritten the definition entirely. Tonight my birthday belonged to me, and for the first time in my life, it truly felt like a celebration.